Humanity discovered planet-sized warships. The galaxy could only watch in silence. The stars looked the same as they always did. Cold, distant, and uncaring, Captain Minho stared out the viewport of the eternal horizon and wondered, not for the first time, why humanity bothered reaching for them at all. "Captain, we have something strange on the scanners." The voice belonged to Doyen, the ship's pilot. He was young, maybe 25, with quick hands and even quicker instincts. Minho trusted him more than he trusted the ship's aging computer systems. Minho pushed himself away from the window and floated through the zero gravity to the command console. "Strange how?" "Gravitational readings that don't match anything in the database," Doyen said. His fingers moved across the screen, pulling up graphs and numbers that looked wrong. "There's something massive out there, sir. Really massive." Dr. Yuna appeared from the research section, pulling herself along the handholds. She was 40 years old but looked younger, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Earth's universities had ignored her theories for years, calling them impossible. That's why she was out here in the dark instead of teaching on Earth. "How massive?" she asked. Doyen swallowed. "Moon-sized? Maybe bigger." Multiple objects. The ship went quiet. They were 3 billion kilometers from Earth, beyond the known mapping zones. "Out here there shouldn't be anything except rocks and ice." "Could be a cluster of asteroids," said Hana, the chief engineer. She didn't look up from her repair work on a faulty air recycler. Hana was practical, always had been. She believed in what she could touch and fix. "Asteroids don't create gravitational fields like this," Yuna said. She was already moving to her station, pulling up the data. Her eyes went wide. "By the gods." "Doyen, take us closer." Slowly, Minho made the call. "Do it, but keep the engines warm. If this is some kind of anomaly, I want to be able to run." The Eternal Horizon was a small ship designed for long-range mineral surveys. It had been out here for 8 months, finding nothing valuable. Earth's government wanted resources. The galaxy's other species had them. Humanity did not. That was the way things were. The Galactic Concordance controlled everything beyond humanity's solar system. 47 alien species, all more advanced, all looking down at humans like children playing with toys. Earth had been begging for trade agreements and technology sharing for 50 years. The answer was always the same: when you're ready. Humanity was never ready in their eyes. As they approached, the sensors started going crazy. Yuna's hand shook as she read the data. "There are structures. Artificial structures. Under the ice and rock." "Impossible," Hana said, but she had stopped working. Everyone was watching the screens now. "Not impossible," Yuna whispered. "Just impossible for us." The objects came into view on the external cameras. They looked like small planets at first, dark and covered in frozen debris. But as the Eternal Horizon got closer, the truth became clear. These weren't planets. They were ships, enormous beyond understanding, each one the size of Earth's moon, buried under millions of years of cosmic dust and ice. "There are dozens of them," Doyen said. His voice was barely audible. "Hundreds, maybe." Minho felt his heart hammering. In all of humanity's history, they had never found anything like this. The galaxy had ruins and artifacts, sure, but nothing that still looked intact. "Nothing this big. We need to land on one," Yuna said. "Are you insane?" Hana shot back. "We have no idea what these are. They could be dangerous. They could be everything," Yuna said. She turned to Minho. "Captain, this is the discovery of the millennium. Maybe of all time. If we don't investigate, someone else will." Minho knew she was right. If the Concordance found this place, humanity would never see it again. They would seal it off, study it themselves, and humanity would remain exactly where it was. On the outside, looking in. "Find us a landing spot," he said. They set down on the surface of the closest vessel 6 hours later. It was dead and cold, frozen in time. The hull was made of something that wasn't metal, wasn't stone, but something in between. The scanners couldn't identify it. Yuna was the first one out, wearing a bulky pressure suit. Minho followed with Doyun and Hana. Their boots crunched on the icy surface. Above them, the other vessels floated in the void like sleeping giants. "Look for an entrance," Minho ordered. "Anything that looks like a door or a hatch." They searched for 3 hours before Doyen found it. A circular pattern in the hull, almost invisible under the ice. When he brushed away the frost, symbols appeared. They glowed with a faint blue light. "It's responding to touch," Yuna said, excited. She pressed her gloved hand against the symbols. Nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. The circular pattern began to turn. The ice cracked and fell away. A doorway opened, revealing a passage that descended into darkness. Lights flickered on inside one by one, as if the ship was waking up after a very long sleep. "I have a bad feeling about this," Hana said. "Noted," Minho replied. "But we're going in." The interior was vast. Corridors stretched in every direction, each one wide enough to drive a building through. The walls glowed softly, providing light. The air was stale but breathable, which should have been impossible. They found the command center by following the lights. It was a massive room with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. In the center stood a pillar covered in more of those strange symbols. Yuna approached it carefully. "This is a control interface, I think. The design is nothing like anything I've ever seen. Can you read it?" Minho asked. "Give me time." While Yuna worked, Doyen explored the room. He found something near the back wall, a small device floating in a stasis field. It was projecting a hologram, playing the same message over and over in a language none of them understood. "Captain," Doyen called, "you need to see this." They gathered around the device. The ship's translation software struggled with the language, but slowly, words began to form. "The Architect's final armada, sealed until the inheritors arrive." "Architects?" Hana said. "Who are the architects?" More importantly, Minho said, "Who are the inheritors?" Yuna was silent, staring at the message. Then she looked up at Minho with an expression he couldn't quite read. Fear, hope, maybe both. "I think," she said slowly, "we just found out why humanity has always felt like we don't belong in this galaxy. We weren't supposed to be here yet. We were supposed to find this first." "That's crazy," Hana said. "Is it?" Yuna gestured at the massive ship around them. "We're standing inside a vessel the size of a moon, built by someone millions of years ago, and it just opened its doors for us. For humans. Not for the concordant species. For us." Minho felt the weight of that truth settling on his shoulders. If this was real, if humanity was somehow connected to these ancient builders, everything would change. The concordants would never accept it. They would claim the ships for themselves or destroy them or start a war. "We don't tell anyone," Minho said. "Not yet. We report this as a minor archaeological find. Nothing important. We need time to understand what we've found before the galaxy comes knocking." The others nodded. They all understood. Humanity had been given a gift, but accepting it might cost them everything. As they left the ship and returned to the eternal horizon, none of them looked back at the graveyard of ancient vessels. But they all felt the weight of eyes watching them from the darkness, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. Neither did humanity, but soon everyone would learn the truth. Humanity discovered planet-sized warships. The galaxy could only watch in silence. 3 months had passed since the discovery. 3 months of lies and secrets. Earth's government had moved quickly once they understood what Minho had found. Ships arrived in the dark, carrying scientists and soldiers all sworn to silence. They built a hidden station inside one of the larger vessels, calling it Research Site Omega. Admiral Seokjin commanded the operation. He was 58 years old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many political battles. He stood in the command center of the newly established base and watched the reports come in. Every day brought new discoveries. Every day made the secret harder to keep. "We've identified over 3,000 vessels," reported a young officer. "All different sizes, but the smallest is still larger than anything humanity has ever built." "And the concordance?" Seokjin asked. "Still believes we're studying ancient ruins. Nothing militarily significant." Seokjin nodded. The lie wouldn't hold forever. It didn't need to. It just needed to hold long enough. Ambassador Jisoo arrived from Earth that morning. She was 42 and had spent the last 10 years begging the concordance for respect that never came. She looked tired. They all did. "The council is asking questions," she told Seokjin. "They want to send an inspection team. Stall them. I've been stalling for 3 months. They're getting suspicious. Then stall them for 3 more. Seokjin turned to face her. "We're close to a breakthrough. I can feel it." He was right, but not in the way he expected. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely person. Yoonji, a 23-year-old computer scientist who had been working on the architect's language. She was brilliant in the way that made older scientists uncomfortable. She saw patterns where others saw chaos. She cracked the code on a Tuesday. It's not really a language, she explained to a room full of people who didn't understand. It's more like music, mathematical music. Once you hear the rhythm, everything else makes sense. Can you translate the ship systems? Yuna asked. She had become the chief scientist on the project, finally getting the recognition Earth had denied her. I can do better than that, Yunji said. I can talk to them. The ships, it turned out, were alive. Not in the biological sense, but alive nonetheless. They were semi-sentient, designed to bond with specific individuals through neural interfaces. The architects had built them to be partners, not just tools. They've been waiting, Yunji said, her voice full of wonder. For 3 million years, they've been waiting for someone who could understand them. And now we're here, Seokjin said. Can we control them? Yunji hesitated. Control is the wrong word. We can bond with them. But it has to be voluntary. From both sides, Doyen volunteered first. He was still on site, having refused to return to Earth. Something about the ships called to him. He couldn't explain it even to himself. They brought him to one of the smaller vessels. Smaller meaning it was only the size of a small moon instead of a large one. The ship had designated itself in the data as a scout class. Just touch the interface, Yunji instructed. And keep your mind open. Doyen placed his hand on the glowing panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded into light and sensation and knowledge that shouldn't fit inside a human mind. He saw the ship's history, saw the architects building it, pouring their hopes and fears into its creation, saw the enemy they feared, a darkness that consumed everything, saw the final battle, and the desperate choice to seal the fleet away, waiting for someone worthy to inherit their legacy. And the ship saw him, saw humanity, saw a species still young and rough, but with potential burning like a star. The bond formed in an instant. Doyen gasped and fell to his knees. When he looked up, his eyes were glowing with the same blue light as the ship's systems. I can feel it, he whispered. I can feel everything. Its name is Wanderer. It's happy to finally wake up. The knowledge flooded into him. Weapons that bent space and time, shields that existed in multiple dimensions at once, engines that could fold reality itself to cross impossible distances. The architects had been gods, and they had built these ships to fight something even worse. What were they fighting? Admiral Seokjin asked. What scared them enough to build weapons like this? Doyen's expression went dark. They called it the Silence. It consumed galaxies. The architects built this fleet to stop it, but... He trailed off. But what? Yuna pressed, but they were losing. That's why they sealed the ships. They hoped someone else someday would be strong enough to finish the fight. The room went quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. The enemy might still be out there. And humanity had just rung the dinner bell. More volunteers came forward. Hana bonded with a vessel she named Ironheart, a ship designed for engineering and construction on a massive scale. Yuna chose Scholar, a science vessel that could analyze entire star systems in seconds. Each bonding was different. Each person experienced the ships in their own way. But they all came back changed, carrying knowledge that made Earth's greatest scientists look like children. The problem was control. The ships were powerful beyond measure, but learning to use that power took time. Doyen spent hours each day in neural link with Wanderer, learning to think at speeds that made normal conversation feel like slow motion. It's like learning to use a new limb, he tried to explain. Except the limb can destroy planets. Meanwhile, the Concordance was getting closer to the truth. Their spy satellites had detected unusual energy signatures. Their intelligence services were asking uncomfortable questions. Ambassador Jisoo could only hold them back for so long. Everything came to a head when a Concordance stealth probe penetrated the site's outer perimeter. It was small, barely the size of a basketball, but its sensors were powerful. It saw the awakened vessels. It saw humans bonded to technology that shouldn't exist, and it transmitted everything back to the Concordance Council before the humans could stop it. The response was immediate. Within hours, a full Concordance investigation fleet was en route to human space. Within days, they would arrive with demands and threats. Admiral Seokjin gathered his key people, Minho, Yuna, Doyun, Hana, and the other bonded pilots. 12 humans who could now command planet-sized warships. The secret is out, Seokjin said. The Concordance knows what we have. They'll demand we surrender the ships. They'll claim the technology is too dangerous for a primitive species like us. He looked at each of them in turn. We have a choice. We can give up everything we've found, or we can show them that humanity is not as primitive as they think. What are you suggesting? Mino asked, though he already knew the answer. A demonstration. Nothing aggressive, just impressive. Show them what these ships can do. Show them that we have the right to be here. Doyen stood up. His eyes still glowed faintly with the connection to Wanderer. The ship agrees. It's time to stop hiding. The others nodded. They had all felt it. The pull of the ancient vessels, the sense that this moment was always coming. Humanity had been preparing for this test without knowing it. Now the test was here. 3 days later, when the Concordance fleet arrived at the edge of human space, they found 3 moon-sized vessels waiting for them. Wanderer, Ironheart, and Scholar floated in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with power that made the Concordance sensors scream warnings. The fleet demanded answers. They demanded surrender. They demanded humanity know its place. Instead, humanity showed them something else. In perfect synchronization, the 3 vessels jumped across a distance that should have taken weeks to cross. They appeared directly beside the Concordance flagship in a flash of impossible physics. They did not fire. They did not threaten. They simply existed there, close enough to touch, demonstrating power that made the entire Concordance fleet look like toys. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer asking for permission. They had found their inheritance, and they would not give it up. The galaxy watched in silence. Not the silence of respect yet, but the silence of shock. The silence of realizing that everything had just changed and no one knew what would happen next. But in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, something else noticed the awakening. Something ancient and hungry stirred in its sleep, sensing the power that had just ignited. The silence was waking up. Humanity discovered planet-sized warships. The galaxy could only watch in silence. The Concordance Council met in emergency session. 47 species, represented by their leaders, gathered in the great chamber on the neutral station called Unity Prime. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had never been afraid before. Now they were terrified. Counselor Vex stood at the center podium. He was Talrin, a reptilian species known for careful thinking and long-term planning. His scales were usually a calm blue, but today they flickered with orange stress patterns. The humans have activated the Architect's fleet, he said. His voice carried to every corner of the chamber. The fleet we have searched for centuries. The fleet we could never access. They stole it, snarled General Cato. He was Orvan, an insectoid species that valued military strength above all else. His 6 arms gestured angrily. They are primitives. They have no right to such power. The question of rights is complicated, Vex replied. The architects designed those ships to be activated by a specific type of consciousness. We tried for centuries. Every species in the Concordance tried. None of us could bond with the vessels. And the humans could, said another counselor from the Hessian species. That should concern us more than anything else. It did concern them. That was the problem. For 10,000 years, the Concordance had maintained peace through careful balance. No single species held too much power. No single species could threaten the others. The system worked because everyone agreed to the rules. Humanity had just broken all the rules. We must act, General Cato insisted, before they grow stronger. Our combined fleets can overwhelm them. Numbers will defeat technology, will they? Vex asked quietly. Our sensors recorded the human vessel's movement. They crossed 15 light-years in seconds. Our fastest ships would need weeks. If we attack, we may lose everything. The chamber erupted in argument. Some wanted war. Some wanted negotiation. Some wanted to pretend none of this was happening and hope it went away. Fear made them loud and stupid. Meanwhile, in the intelligence section of the station, someone was finding the truth. Her name was Nari, and she was human. She worked for Earth's diplomatic mission, officially as a translator. Unofficially, she gathered information the way other people breathed. She had access to the Concordance's public databases. Most of it was boring. Trade agreements, territorial maps, cultural exchanges. But Nari had learned long ago that boring databases sometimes hid interesting secrets. She found it buried in a historical archive marked Pre-Concordance Era, Architect Studies. Classified Level 7. The file was old, over 2,000 years old. It detailed Concordance expeditions to find the Architect's technology. But more than that, it explained why they wanted it so badly. They knew, Nari whispered to herself. They've always known about the graveyard. The file described multiple attempts to access the sealed fleet. The Concordance had found the location centuries before humanity even left Earth. They had tried everything: force, science, prayer. Nothing worked. The ships remained sealed, unresponsive to every species that touched them. The Concordance had sealed off the area and lied about it. They told the galaxy the graveyard was just dead rocks and old debris, not worth studying, not worth mentioning. Meanwhile, they kept sending secret expeditions, hoping one day they would crack the code. They never did. And when humanity started expanding into deep space, the Concordance watched nervously. They knew humans would eventually reach that region. They hoped humans would be as unsuccessful as everyone else. Instead, the ships had opened for humanity like flowers greeting the sun. Nari copied the file and sent it through encrypted channels to Ambassador Jisoo and Admiral Seokjin. Then she erased all traces of her search and went back to pretending she only translated boring speeches. When Jisoo read the file, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: righteous anger. The Concordance had lied. They had treated humanity as ignorant children while hiding the truth. All those years of begging for technology, for respect, for a fair chance, and the Concordance had been sitting on secrets that belonged to the entire galaxy. She went to the council chamber the next day, uninvited and unannounced. Security tried to stop her, but she pushed past them. The assembled leaders stared at her in shock. Humans did not interrupt council sessions. It simply wasn't done, you knew, Jisoo said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the chamber like a blade. You've known about the Architect's fleet for centuries. You've been trying to steal it, and when you couldn't, you hid it from the rest of the galaxy. The silence that followed was heavy. Councillor Vex's scales flickered from orange to deep purple, a Talran sign of shame. We protected the galaxy, he said finally. The technology was too dangerous. Too dangerous for everyone except yourselves, Jisoo shot back. You wanted it. You just couldn't take it. And now that humanity can, you call us thieves. General Cato stood, his multiple arms bristling. This changes nothing. The humans are too primitive to wield such power. They will destroy themselves, or worse, destroy us all. Then maybe, Jisoo said coldly, you should have helped us become less primitive instead of keeping us in the dark for 50 years. Before the argument could continue, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights flooded the chamber. Councillor Vex's communication device lit up with urgent messages. What's happening? Someone demanded. The monitoring stations at the Galactic Rim, Vex said, his voice shaking. They're going offline. All of them. Something is wrong. The chamber displays lit up with star maps. At the galaxy's eastern edge, markers were disappearing. Not slowly, but rapidly, one after another. Entire star systems were going dark. Equipment malfunction? Someone suggested hopefully. Across 300 systems simultaneously? Vex said. No. Something else is happening. Admiral Seokjin received the same reports aboard the Endurance, the newly awakened command vessel that served as humanity's flagship. He stood with Doyen, Yuna, Hana, and the other bonded pilots, all of them feeling the ship's growing unease through their neural connections. The vessels are afraid, Doyen said. I can feel Wanderer reacting. It knows what this is. What? Seokjin demanded. The silence, Yuna whispered. Her eyes were unfocused, seeing something far away through Scholar's sensors. It's the enemy the architects feared. It's waking up. A new pilot, a young woman named Minji, bonded to the scout vessel Pathfinder, suddenly gasped. I need to investigate. Pathfinder wants to go. It needs to see. Absolutely not, Seokjin began. But Minji wasn't listening anymore. Her connection to the ship was too strong. Before anyone could stop her, Pathfinder jumped, vanishing from normal space. She reappeared at the Galactic Rim where the monitoring stations had gone dark. What she saw there would haunt her forever. Stars were disappearing. Not exploding, not collapsing, just ceasing to exist. Reality itself was being erased, leaving only void. And in that void, something moved. Something that hurt to look at, that made her mind scream in ways language couldn't describe. The silence was not a fleet or an army. It was entropy given form. It was the heat death of the universe made conscious and hungry. It consumed everything, matter, energy, light, even the fabric of space itself. Wherever it touched, existence ended. Pathfinder fled, jumping away before the silence could notice them. Minji returned to the fleet shaking and crying. The images burned into her mind. We can't fight that, she sobbed. Nothing can fight that. But Yuna was already deep in the architect's databases searching for answers. What she found was both hope and horror. The architects fought the silence for 1,000 years, she reported. These ships, all 3,000 of them, were built specifically for that purpose. And they were losing. That's why they sealed the fleet. They hoped someone in the future would be strong enough to finish what they started. And if we're not strong enough? Seokjin asked. Yuna met his eyes. Then the galaxy ends, all of it. Every world, every species, everything. The silence doesn't conquer. It erases. News spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Concordants tried to hide it, but they couldn't. Panic erupted. Species that had been preparing for war with humanity suddenly realized they were facing extinction instead. General Cato wanted to mobilize every Concordance fleet to fight. Counselor Vex knew it would be useless. Their weapons couldn't hurt something that existed outside normal physics. Only the architect's vessels had the technology to fight the silence. Only humanity could save them. Ambassador Jisoo stood before the council one more time. The chamber was quiet now. Fear had made them humble. You treated us like children, she said, like we didn't deserve a place in your perfect galaxy. Now your perfect galaxy is ending and you need us to save it. What do you want? Vex asked. Revenge? To watch us burn? Jisoo was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. No, we want to help. Not because you deserve it. Not because you've earned it. But because it's the right thing to do. She turned to address the entire council. Humanity will lead the defense. Our bonded pilots will command the Architect's fleet. But we won't do it alone. The Concordance fleet will support us. Every ship, every species. We fight together or we die separately. And after? General Cato asked. After we defeat this silence? What then? Humanity discovered planet-sized warships. The galaxy could only watch in silence. The war room aboard the Endurance never slept anymore. Dr. Junho worked there at all hours, surrounded by data streams and holographic displays. He was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life. But the silence was not life. It was the opposite of life, and that made it his problem to solve. It doesn't make sense, he muttered for the 100th time. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. Entropy is a process, not an entity. It doesn't think. It doesn't want. It just is. Maybe that's the point, Yuna said. She had barely left the war room herself, diving deep into the architect's records. Maybe the silence is what happens when the universe itself starts dying. Not in trillions of years, but now. Accelerated somehow, Junho pulled up another display. This one showed the expansion rate of the silence. It was growing faster each day, consuming space at an increasing rate. 3 Concordance worlds had fallen in the first week. 7 more in the second week. Now 2 weeks later, entire sectors were going dark. It's feeding, Junho said suddenly. Every time it consumes matter and energy, it grows stronger, faster. If we don't stop it soon, it will reach a point where nothing can stop it. Captain Sora entered the war room. She commanded humanity's conventional fleet, the normal warships built with human technology. They looked like toys next to the architect's vessels, but Sora refused to be sidelined. My scouts report Concordance fleets are gathering at Viridian Expanse, she said. They think that's where the silence will strike next. High population, strategic location, 17 billion people. Are they evacuating? Yuna asked. Sora shook her head. Not enough time. Not enough ships. Even if we sent every vessel in the galaxy, we couldn't move 17 billion people before the silence arrives. The weight of that settled over the room. 17 billion lives about to be erased from existence, and they were going to watch it happen. No, Junho said firmly. We're going to fight. That's what these ships were built for. The Concordants tried fighting, Sora reminded him. Their weapons pass right through the silence. It exists in multiple dimensions. Physical attacks don't work, but the Architect's weapons do, Yuna said. They're designed to manipulate reality itself. If anything can hurt the silence, it's these ships. Admiral Seokjin called a meeting of all bonded pilots. 23 of them now, each connected to one of the awakened vessels. Young and old, military and civilian, they represented humanity's best hope. And they were terrified. Doyun spoke for all of them. We've been training with the ships for weeks. We understand the basic systems, but fighting something like the silence, we're not ready. We'll never be ready, Seokjin replied. The architects had centuries to prepare, and they lost. We have weeks, but we have something they didn't have. What's that? Asked Minji. She still had nightmares about what she'd seen at the Galactic Rim. Desperation, Seokjin said. And each other. The architects fought alone, each vessel independent. But you're human. You know how to work together. You can network your consciousness through the ships in ways the architects never imagined. It was true. The bonded pilots had discovered they could link their minds through the vessels, sharing thoughts and tactics instantly. It was uncomfortable and strange, but it worked. 23 minds thinking as one, commanding 23 planet-sized warships in perfect coordination. We fight at Viridian Expanse, Seokjin continued. The Concordance fleet will provide support. Our job is to hold the silence back long enough to evacuate as many people as possible. And if we can't hold it? Hana asked quietly. Seokjin met her eyes. Then we die trying, because that's what heroes do. The combined fleet assembled at Viridian Expanse 3 days later. 23 architects' vessels, each the size of a moon, surrounded by thousands of smaller Concordance warships. It was the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. It looked pathetic next to the silence. The enemy arrived like a wound in space. Reality tore open, and through that tear came something that shouldn't exist. It was darkness, but not the darkness of space. This was the absence of everything, a void that consumed light and matter and time itself. Around the main tear, smaller fragments appeared. They looked almost physical, like ships made of entropy. They moved with purpose, spreading out to engulf the system. All vessels weapons-free, Admiral Seokjin ordered. Concordance fleet target the fragments. Human vessels focus on the main tier. Fire at will. The Concordance fleet opened fire first. Thousands of energy beams, missiles, and plasma weapons lit up the void. They struck the fragments and passed right through as if firing at shadows. Some ships got too close. They simply stopped existing, erased from reality in the blink of an eye. Concordance vessels fall back, Seokjin shouted. You can't hurt them. Maintain distance and focus on evacuation. The architect's vessels moved forward. Doyen felt Wanderer's weapons coming online, and through their bond he understood what they did. They didn't fire energy or matter. They fired reality itself, concentrated and weaponized. Engaging, he reported, and Wanderer fired. The weapon was beautiful and terrible. It tore through space-time, creating a stable zone where the silence couldn't exist. The fragments caught in that zone didn't explode or burn. They simply failed to be, pushed back into whatever dimension they came from. It's working, Minji shouted. Pathfinder fired its own weapons, targeting more fragments. We can hurt them. The other vessels joined the attack. 23 planet-sized warships unleashed weapons that bent reality to their will. The fragments began to fall back, and for a moment, hope bloomed in the fleet. Then the main tear widened, and the silence itself emerged. It was massive beyond understanding. If the fragments were ships, this was a fleet. It was an ocean of entropy, vast and hungry and ancient. It flowed toward them like a tsunami of non-existence. All vessels form defensive perimeter, Seokjin ordered. Network your consciousness. Fight as one. The bonded pilots linked their minds. 23 humans became a single awareness, thinking with impossible speed and coordination. Through that network, they commanded their vessels with precision the architects had never achieved. They created a barrier of stable reality, a wall of existence itself to hold back the void. The silence crashed against that wall like water against a dam. For a moment, the barrier held, then cracks began to form. We're not strong enough, Hana reported. Ironheart was at the center of the barrier, taking the worst of the assault. The silence is too powerful. We can't hold it. Yuna, connected to Scholar, was analyzing the enemy even as they fought. There's a pattern, she said suddenly. The silence isn't random. It's flowing from a central point, like water from a spring. A source point? Yunyo asked from his station aboard Endurance. He was monitoring everything, looking for any weakness. Where? Yuna shared her findings through the network. Deep within the silence, at the heart of the main tear, was something different. Not a fragment or a ship, but a rupture in space-time itself. A wound where reality had broken and the silence was pouring through. That's how it entered our galaxy, Yuna realized. The architects must have damaged it in their final battle, forced it to retreat. But they couldn't seal the rupture, so they sealed themselves instead, waiting for someone who could finish the job. Can we seal it? Seokjin demanded. Maybe, Yuna said. But we'd have to get inside the silence, past all the fragments, past the void itself, right to the rupture's heart. It would require multiple vessels working together, overloading their reactors to generate enough power. Everyone understood what that meant. It was a suicide mission. The vessels going in wouldn't come back out. I'll do it, Doyen said immediately. Wanderer and I volunteer. Ironheart will join you, Hana added. One by one, the other pilots volunteered. Not all of them, but 7 in total. 7 humans willing to die to save 17 billion people they'd never met. No, Captain Minho said. He was aboard the Eternal Horizon, still his home after all these months. I should lead this mission. You're not bonded to a vessel, Seokjin pointed out. Doesn't matter, Minho replied. This started with me in the Eternal Horizon. It should end with us too. I'll navigate. The bonded vessels can follow my lead. There was no time to argue. The barrier was failing. The silence was breaking through. The Concordance evacuation fleet was still pulling people off Viridian Expanse, desperate to save as many lives as possible. Do it, Admiral Seokjin ordered. All other vessels, hold the line. Give them the time they need. The 7 volunteers broke from the defensive formation and dove into the silence. It was like swimming through nightmares. Reality twisted around them. Time moved strangely, too fast and too slow at once. The fragments swarmed them, trying to tear the vessels apart. But the humans held together, their minds linked, their purpose clear. Minho's Eternal Horizon led the way, somehow navigating through the chaos by instinct alone. The others followed, trusting him completely. They found the rupture at the heart of the void. It was small, barely a crack in reality, but through that crack poured infinite entropy. This was how the silence had entered the galaxy millions of years ago. This was what the architects had failed to seal. We're not strong enough to close it, Yuna reported, even as Scholar analyzed the rupture. Humanity discovered planet-sized warships. The galaxy could only watch in silence. The memorial service was held on Unity Prime, the Concordance's central station. For the first time in galactic history, every species sent representatives, not because protocol demanded it, but because they wanted to. They came to honor 7 humans who had died to save them all. The names were carved into a monument made from metal salvaged from the Eternal Horizon. Captain Minho, Pilot Doyen, Engineer Hana, Dr. Yuna, and 3 others whose names were now spoken with reverence across 47 worlds, Hyun, Jiwon, and Taehyung. 7 names. 7 heroes. 7 guardians standing eternal watch in a place between dimensions, holding back the end of everything. Admiral Seokjin stood before the monument, his face carved from stone. He had sent them to their deaths. The fact that it was necessary didn't make it easier. They volunteered, Ambassador Jisoo said quietly beside him. All of them. They knew what it would cost. That doesn't make me feel better. It's not supposed to, Jisoo replied. We carry this weight. That's the price of command. But their sacrifice gave us tomorrow. That means something. It meant everything. Viridian Expanse had been saved. 17 billion people who should have died were alive. The silence had been pushed back, sealed behind a barrier that would hold as long as the 7 guardians maintained it. Forever, if necessary. The Concordance Council assembled after the memorial. The chamber was different now. Where once there had been 47 seats for 47 species, now there were 48. A new seat had been added, placed at the highest point of the chamber, a position of honor. It was empty. Humanity had not yet chosen their permanent counselor. But the seat existed, and that was the point. Humanity had earned their place at the table, not through politics or begging, but through blood and sacrifice. Counselor Vex addressed the assembly. His scales were a mournful dark blue. The humans saved us, all of us. We owe them a debt that can never be repaid. They showed us what true strength looks like, added a representative from the Hessian species. Not the strength to dominate, but the strength to sacrifice. Even General Cato stood and spoke, though the words came hard for him. I called them primitive. I was wrong. They are young, yes, but they have something we lost long ago. They have courage that doesn't count the cost. The Council formally recognized humanity as the inheritors of the Architect's legacy. All 3,000 vessels, the ones still sleeping and the ones already awakened, belonged to humanity by right. No species would challenge that claim. Not anymore. But with that recognition came responsibility. The remaining 16 architects' vessels that were bonded to human pilots formed the core of a new organization, the Silent Vigil. The Vigil had one purpose: monitor the seal that held back the silence and prepare for the day it might fail, because everyone knew the truth. The seal would not hold forever. The silence was patient and eternal. It would test the barrier, probe for weaknesses, wait for the guardians to falter. Minji took command of the Vigil. She was young, barely 25, but she had seen the silence firsthand. She understood the threat better than anyone except the 7 who now held the seal. "We're not soldiers," she told her fellow pilots during their first official meeting. "We're watchkeepers. Every day we check the seal. Every day we honor the sacrifice of those who came before us. And every day we prepare for the fight we hope never comes." The Vigil established a base at the edge of the galaxy, close to where the rupture had appeared. Ships came and went, but the Vigil vessels remained on constant patrol, watching, waiting, remembering. Back on Earth, humanity struggled to understand what had happened. They had gone from being barely relevant in galactic politics to being saviors in less than a year. The change was too fast, too big. Some people handled it well. Others didn't. There were celebrations. There were monuments. There were songs written about the 7 guardians and poems about humanity's courage. But there was also fear. Fear that they had risen too fast, taken on too much responsibility, made enemies they couldn't see yet. Dr. Junho stayed at the research station in the architect's graveyard, now officially named the Legacy Site. He spent his days studying the remaining dormant vessels, trying to understand everything the architects had left behind. "We're living on borrowed knowledge," he told anyone who would listen. "We can use the ships, but we don't fully understand them. That needs to change. We need to learn, to grow, to become worthy of this inheritance." Earth invested everything into education and research. Children studied the architects' mathematics. Scientists worked to decode ancient databases. Engineers tried to recreate the technology using human understanding, instead of just copying what they found. It would take generations, maybe centuries, but humanity had time now. The silence was contained. The galaxy was safe. For now. 6 months after the battle at Viridian Expanse, Ambassador Jisoo stood before the Concordance Council for the last time as Earth's representative. She had accepted the position of permanent counselor, speaking for humanity on the galactic stage. "I know what you're thinking," she told the assembled species. "You're wondering what humanity will do with all this power. Will we become tyrants? Will we use our advantage to dominate you the way you dominated us?" The chamber was silent. They were all wondering exactly that. "The answer is no," Jisoo continued. "We didn't save you to rule you. We saved you because it was the right thing to do. Because every life matters whether they're human or not. Because we believe the galaxy is better when we stand together instead of apart." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But I want to be clear about something. We will not forget how we were treated. For 50 years, humanity begged for respect, for fair trade, for a chance to prove ourselves. And for 50 years, you treated us like children who didn't deserve a seat at your table." "We were wrong," Counselor Vex said. "We admit that freely." "Yes, you were," Jisoo agreed. "And we forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward despite the past. It means building something better." She looked at each representative in turn. "The architects left us these vessels as a test to see if we were worthy, but I think they were testing all of us, not just humanity. Can we move past old fears and old hatreds? Can we work together, truly together as equals? Can we build a galaxy where strength is measured not by who has the biggest fleet, but by who lifts up those who've fallen? That's the galaxy we want to help create," Jisoo finished. "Not because we have the power to force it, but because we believe it's possible. The silence showed us what happens when we're divided. Let's make sure we never forget that lesson." The council voted that day to restructure the concordance. No more would there be ruling species and lesser species. Every world, every civilization would have a voice. Decisions would be made together, with respect for all. It wasn't perfect. Old prejudices died hard, but it was a beginning. On the anniversary of the battle, Minji took Pathfinder to the location where the rupture had been. She couldn't see the seal with normal sensors, but through her bond with the ship she could feel it. could feel the 7 guardians on the other side still standing watch. "We haven't forgotten you," she transmitted, knowing they couldn't hear. Or maybe they could. The bond between ship and pilot was strange and wonderful. Who knew what was possible? The galaxy's healing. People are working together. There's hope now, real hope, because of what you did. She felt something then, not a message or a voice, but a warmth, a sense of approval, of pride, of love. Maybe it was just her imagination. Maybe it was real. It didn't matter. What mattered was that 7 humans had given everything so that everyone else could have a future. That was the true inheritance of the architects. Not weapons or ships or technology, but the understanding that some things were worth any sacrifice. That protecting others, even those who had wronged you, was the highest calling anyone could answer. Humanity had discovered planet-sized warships. They had awakened an ancient fleet. They had faced the end of existence itself, and when the galaxy needed heroes, humanity had stepped forward. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because they were human and humans didn't know how to quit. The galaxy watched in silence. No longer the silence of dismissal or the silence of fear, but the silence of respect, the silence of gratitude, the silence of watching someone stand up when everyone else sits down, and thinking, yes, that is what we should all aspire to be. The silence itself still waited in the void, patient and eternal. One day it would test the seal again. One day the galaxy would face extinction once more. But that day was not today. Today, 17 billion people on Viridian Expanse woke up to see the sun. Today, children across 48 worlds learned about 7 heroes who became legend. Today, humanity and the Concordance worked together to build something better. And in a place between dimensions, 7 guardians stood eternal watch, making sure there would be a tomorrow, because that's what heroes do. They stand watch. They hold the line. They never give up, and they never ever let the darkness win.